Our services this month have been devoted to shared ministry, the idea that who we are and what we do as a congregation calls all of us into partnership. Ministry isn't just the responsibility of the minister, but is something that needs all of us in many different ways to participate. Whether that means teaching our children or bringing meals to one another, providing music for services or keeping our buildings maintained, attending a demonstration for civil rights, or making this a friendly and inviting place on Sunday mornings. We began this month then by considering small group ministry, where circles of 10 or so people get together to create a safe space where they can truly share from their hearts and offer one another deep, compassionate listening in return. I hope you'll be part of one of the fellowship circles that are starting up this fall, and you can talk to Gail Phillips about how to do that. Then we heard from those members who've been training as lay pastoral care associates over the last year, as well as how that's different from the work of the caring committee that is just as important when it comes to our promises to look after one another. At the middle of the month, guest preacher Sarah Mackey talked about some of the changes that are going on in our society and what it means to feed the people who might come looking for us. And last Sunday we took a look at what it means to practice stewardship of our own community, from welcoming everyone who comes through our doors to reaching out to those people we haven't seen recently. Over the last month, then, we've talked a lot about shared ministry within the context of this congregation, in terms of what it means to be a congregational community. And that's important, but it's not the end of the story. There's a risk with any organization that the be-all and end-all will become maintaining it as it currently is, or at least trying to maintain it how people misremember it being when they first joined it. But even with a willingness to embrace a bold vision of community and then make the necessary changes to live into that vision, there's more to being a congregation than the congregation itself. Consider our congregation's mission, for instance. For the last 15 years or so, this fellowship has put into words its mission to create a dynamic community that celebrates life and searches for truths. Now, one of the questions that's asked about that mission statement is where justice comes into it. That's not an unreasonable question. After all, Sunday services, social events, and religious exploration are clearly implicated. But what about our work in the wider world? Indeed, as the great Unitarian Universalist theologian James Luther Adams put it, in what is certainly one of my favorite quotes, a purely spiritual religion is a purely spurious religion. Certainly, prophetic action that speaks truth to power is one of the hallmarks of our faith, inherited from both Unitarian and particularly Universalist halves of our religious heritage. And it's integral to most of our 7 principles, as well as built into the very governance of this fellowship. But I would make the case that our efforts to bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice are represented by all 3 pieces of our mission statement. In fact, I would turn that around and say that we cannot fulfill our mission unless justice work is part of it. First, a community is dynamic to the extent that it includes diversity. Homogeneity breeds stagnation, for if there is no difference or variation, then there is no impetus for change or growth. Diversity does not automatically lead to fairness, however, and in fact will only survive where there is equity, compassion, and acceptance of one another. Second, the celebration of life recognizes both joys and sorrows, lifting up the good times, but not pretending that there are no bad times. In this, we honor everyone's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we work together to ensure that everyone may speak their conscience and be heard, finding healthy ways to agree to disagree when necessary. Third, we embrace a plurality of truths. As a religion that helps us to figure out for ourselves what it is we truly believe, we actively encourage one another's spiritual growth, providing a safe place for exploration and demanding a world where people are not treated differently just because of who they are or what they believe. Our ability to create a dynamic community that celebrates life and searches for truths, then, depends intimately and necessarily on an orientation toward justice, both within our own walls and beyond. But what does that look like? Well, let me tell you a story. There were once two people walking alongside a river. Suddenly one of them noticed a baby in the water, struggling and obviously distressed. Without waiting or saying anything, they ran into the river and scooped up the baby. But no sooner had they got back onto the shore than they saw another baby come floating down the river. Now the other person ran into the water and scooped up that second baby. This kept happening, and soon they'd rescued quite a number of babies. It wasn't long, though, before one of them turned and instead of going back into the water yet again, ran instead upstream. The other yelled, "Where are you going?" And the response that came back was, "You keep saving the babies from the water. I'm going to find out who's putting them in the first place." There are various ways to help people who are getting the short end of society's stick. One is to help them directly. Someone's hungry, give them food. Someone's homeless, give them a place to sleep. It's basic compassion, serving their immediate needs and getting them, at least for that day, out of a potentially life-threatening situation. It's like seeing the baby in the river and running in to save it. Another way to help those people, though, is to change those structures in our society that produce hunger and homelessness in the first place. That's like running up the river to find out who keeps putting the babies into it. It's got to be done, or nothing will ever change, but it takes time, and it doesn't help the immediate needs of people suffering from hunger and homelessness. So you've got to keep feeding them and sheltering them in the meantime. It's both and, not either or. That's good news for a congregation that not only recognizes but also embraces the ways in which its mission orients us toward justice. We can feed the hungry and shelter the homeless, just as we do through ongoing programs with St. Paul's and the Living Interfaith Network. We can support and encourage the children in our neighborhood so that they can get the most out of being in school and be less at risk for hunger and homelessness in later life. That's something we're about to start doing with the Boys and Girls Club. And we can witness to unjust systems and advocate for progressive values by partnering, as we have before, with organizations dedicated to the protection and expansion of civil rights, voting rights, marriage rights, and reproductive rights. You'll hear, after our next hymn, about the partnership that we're forming with the Boys and Girls Club. But I do want to take this chance to tell you about an opportunity to be part of something really big next month. Since the beginning of this month, members and supporters of the NAACP have been marching from Selma, Alabama to Washington, D.C. It's 860 miles in all, and part of this historic journey for justice will take place in Richmond from September 10th through 13th. A number of us on the Social Justice Committee are planning to go on one or more of those days, and there's talk of a carpool being organised for the portion of the march on Saturday, September 12th. Now, one of the organisers of the Virginia leg of the march, by the way, is a woman by the name of Cynthia Downs Taylor, who is the new president of the recently reactivated Newport News chapter of the NAACP. And what's more, her grandson was here just a few months ago for a robotics class, I'm guessing one that Brandy offered. So Ms. Downs Taylor knows something about us. I'm excited about the opportunities for future partnerships that this offers. So please let me know if you have any interest in being part of the Journey for Justice next month, I have an information sheet that I can give you. Our fellowship's mission to create a dynamic community that celebrates life and searches for truths does call us out beyond our walls to work for justice. Perhaps, as some have suggested, that particular 15-year-old wording of our mission is in need of an update so that mention of justice can be made more explicit. But I want to leave you with this thought. What if our mission statement didn't just apply to us? What if the community it envisions is not just this congregation? But what if instead it referred to the entire world? What would it mean for everyone, everywhere on our planet, to be part of a dynamic community that celebrates life and searches for truths? As we're about to sing in our next hymn, that would really turn the world around.
You may recall from the Selma Here and Now service held this past spring at Sandy Bottom Nature Park, I talked about the UU Reverend Mark Morrison Reed's keynote speech at the 50th anniversary of the march from Selma to Birmingham. In this address, he talked about why so many UU ministers and lay people felt compelled to go to Selma in the first place. And the common denominator among all of the people who felt compelled to go was that they were in close relationship. They had deep friendships within the African American community. Viola Liuzzo, the white mother of 4 young children who lost her life in Selma, was compelled to go there because her best friend, Sarah Evans, was African American. So it was all about relationships. And Mark's takeaway from his keynote address, his key words were, "With whom are you in relationship?" It's the relationships that make us care so much and love so much that we are compelled to act. So as a student in my final 3rd year of seminary, I've been challenged to develop a project that will move this congregation toward crossing what they call a cultural border. We're not talking necessarily about a national border or talking to someone who has a different native language. It's all about engaging with people that we would not normally engage with in our everyday lives or in our everyday congregational experience. Together with the input of my intern committee and with Reverend Andrew, we selected the project with the Boys and Girls Club at Aqueduct Apartments. This is a city-run public housing project, and it is located right there. If the shades were open, you could see trees. Right behind the trees, if you can peek through, you can see a children's playground. That is the Boys and Girls Club's playground. So they are pretty, almost literally in our backyard. What amazing things do you think could happen if we are in relationship with the children in our own neighborhood? In case you are not aware, you, the UUFP, have an abundance of gifts and talents and expertise that makes you really well suited to help meet the educational, recreational, social, and emotional needs of the Aqueduct Club children and youth. And here are some of the specifics. The youth at the club really need mentors. Mentors visit with a particular child 1 hour per week at the club, and the hours are flexible. And this is where being in relationship can begin. Studies show that 1 hour per week with a child can make a lasting impact on their life. Now, if you have any concerns about whether you're qualified to do this, whether you're good enough, you're not a child development expert, let me tell you what it's like at the club right now. The club has mentoring programs, but not enough mentors. The club manager has solely been trying to mentor 25 children himself, in addition to doing his mentoring duties. Can you imagine what 1 hour individually for all of these children will mean to them and to the club manager? The other thing to note is that the club does not have any adult female staff. So the adult female presence at the club and to be there for both the young men and the women is a really important thing that they do not have at all right now. So if you're worried about being able to make a difference, don't. You can. The club also needs homework helpers, both after school and on a Thursday night special formal Thursday tutoring night. And if you have a hobby or an interest you'd like to share, we will be offering a 1-hour program every Wednesday night, allowing someone or a group from the congregation to come in and share what they love, what they know with the children. No idea is too big or too small, and the club will happily try and accommodate anything you come up with, even the most out-of-the-box idea we will consider. And now I'm happy to say we have a budget. Thanks to the UUFP trustees, if you want to do a project that requires supplies, the purchase of supplies, you will not have to fund them yourself. We will be able to reimburse you. And please see me after the service if you are interested in any of these opportunities. I will be here right in the sanctuary. But whether you plan with volunteering with the club or not, we hope you will come to our joint fellowship club picnic at the Aqueduct Club after second service on September 13th. That's a couple of weeks away. We're going to provide the hot dogs. The rest is potluck provided by us. And it's a good chance to come and visit the clubs, check out the club, meet some of the children. I'm also actively recruiting volunteers to organize some fun activities and to man maybe some activity tables for the kids. And also do the very important job of filling water balloons. So again, come see me after service. But all fun and water balloons aside, we have really high hopes for this initiative, for it to last and to grow. As we develop relationships and learn about the challenges faced by children who lack many of the privileges that we take for granted, the hope is that we will all get to a point where things start to get very real. You know, when things get real, they can be sad and they can be painful and they can be frustrating, but they can also energize us and drive us to act. They can grow us up in a very big way. So I invite you to take a chance, cross a border, and do it with the support of your fellowship community. Let's all be transformed together.